This is The Big Breakdown, a long look back at some of the biggest stories we're covering for you at the Hidden Killers podcast and True Crime Today. This is Hidden Killers with Tony Brueski. Here now, Tony Brueski.
Everybody is asking this question. If you're following the Adelson case, is Wendi next? She's obviously not been charged with anything. She maintains her innocence, and that's where things are at right now. But could things change now that Donna's adjusting to prison? Charlie's toe is hopefully healing up better after being nicked by the door. What's going to happen here? Anything? I don't know. For nearly a decade, the story of the Markel murder has hung over Tallahassee like a ghost. It refuses to leave the room. Every few years, another piece of the puzzle drops, another Adelson brought down, another courtroom revelation that drags the twisted family saga further into the light. Donna Adelson now serving that life in prison for masterminding the murder of her former son-in-law, her former husband, father of her kids, Florida State University law professor Dan Markel. Her son, Charlie Adelson, sits in his own cell after his conviction last year for the same crime. The hitmen who pulled the trigger are behind bars. The middlewoman who arranged it, Catherine McBonna, is serving her time as well. And then there's Wendi, the ex-wife, the mother of Dan Markel's kids. The spark that ignited the entire custody war that prosecutors say became the motive for murder. A woman who, after everyone around her fell, still walks free? Yeah. To some, that freedom feels like justice gone unfinished. To others, it's proof that prosecutors are doing exactly what they should, moving only on what they can prove, not what they suspect. And that's how our justice system works. A suspicion, in this case, is a powerful thing. Wendi has denied any involvement in the plot to kill her ex-husband. She has testified under oath countless times. She's cooperated when called, but the narrative orbit around her never stops spinning. The question that lingers now, louder than ever, after her mother's conviction is simple. What would it actually take to charge Wendi? It's not as easy as most people think. And we're going to walk through this. And I get it. There's anger, especially after hearing the Markels on Dateline the other night talking about them wanting to see their grandchildren, offering like an all-expense-paid trip. Come to Canada. Come, let's go around here. I want to show the grandkids. I want to show Dan's kids what it was like where he grew up, what was life like for their own father. And he alleges that Wendi said that will never happen. Again, that doesn't make you a killer. It can make you a really heartless individual if that's true. I mean, like beyond imagination. But again, not something you arrest somebody for the rest of their life and put them away on. So, what would it take? Well, to indict someone in a murder for hire conspiracy, prosecutors need more than family tension or ugly text messages. They need evidence that's active, deliberate, and admissible, something that shows Wendi wasn't just venting to her mother about her frustrations with Markel, but that she knew a plan existed, that she contributed to it, or that she benefited from it in ways that tie her directly to the crime. Right now, there's no public proof of that. Not yet. I mean, one could argue, did it benefit her that she got to move down to Vietnam? Yeah. Again, they don't seem to have the piece there. If they do, they're holding on to it, waiting for the right time. But the landscape could shift, and quickly, if three things ever happen. The first is the discovery of direct communication. A digital breadcrumb trail. Texts, emails, WhatsApp messages, call logs, anything that puts Wendi in the loop before the murder, not after. In the Donna Adelson trial, prosecutors introduced messages where Donna told her daughter, "It's time for action. You need to put on the performance of your life." The defense argued it was about the custody battle, not a murder plot, and that argument held because without context, those words sit in a gray zone. But if investigators were ever to uncover deleted messages, say, recover them from a backup or a cloud account that explicitly tied Wendi to conversations about eliminating her ex-husband, that would blow the case wide open. Those records could become the bridge between motive and conspiracy if they exist. And make no mistake, law enforcement hasn't stopped looking. The FDLE has subpoenaed data, reanalyzed devices, and is known to be tracing every digital link that survived from 2014. The problem isn't willpower, it's survivability. Technology decays, server purges. And after 11 years, digital trails are as fragile as cobwebs. And we didn't keep the same trails that we do today. Back then, our devices just didn't. Some parts did, some parts didn't. Very different world today. Still, if one of those cobwebs leads to proof of coordination, well, that's enough to start a new grand jury. The second path to a potential charge lies in the money, because in the end, murder for hire always has a receipt. The prosecution's case against Charlie Adelson was built largely on financial patterns and withdrawals, payments, coded transfers through shell accounts, the payments to Catherine McBonna, who funneled money to the hitman. And if Wendi ever touched any of those funds directly or indirectly, she'd be in deep trouble. It doesn't have to be her handing over the cash. It could be a reimbursement, a transfer from one family trust to another, even a wire disguised as a loan that prosecutors can show was compensation for the murder. Again, no evidence that exists. Just saying, if it did, and there's reason to believe investigators have reopened that angle, though. The Adelson family's financials are intertwined across properties, dental businesses, and trusts. Money has a way of revealing the truth when people can't, because if it doesn't, because it just doesn't lie, and it doesn't forget. So they're looking. If the money ever shows she participated, even passively, again, it becomes conspiracy. Again, big if. They've been looking at this family for quite some time now. The third and most explosive potential trigger is cooperation, someone flipping. It could come from anywhere, but the most likely source now is Donna Adelson herself. She's in her 70s. She's never leaving prison alive. The only thing she controls anymore is the story she leaves behind. And in prison, control is currency. It's leverage. If Donna ever decides to talk, to strike a deal, to ease her conscience, or to simply burn the rest of the house down, her testimony, it could change everything. If she were to tell prosecutors that Wendi was involved, like her attorney has been hinting at the whole time her trial was going on, make no mistake, they are not afraid to throw Wendi under the bus. They've attempted to several times. If it's backed up by hard proof, corroborating text, phone records, money movements, Wendi would be indicted within months. It would take one grand jury session. The infrastructure is already there. The narrative is mapped. The state doesn't need to build a new case from scratch. They just need one more verified node to connect Wendi to the conspiracy triangle. But as of today, that node doesn't exist publicly, and that's why she remains uncharged. And again, this all does look horrible. This family is horrible. Some have escaped. One son out of New York, he got out. Was Wendi standing close to the fire but not participating in roasting any of the marshmallows? I don't know. Did she know they were going to roast marshmallows, I guess, is more of the question. From a psychological standpoint, Wendi's position is fascinating and precarious. She's testified under immunity that gives her partial protection. Nothing she said in her mother's trial can be used against her directly, but that immunity is not absolute. It doesn't cover new evidence, new statements, or independent corroboration that sits outside of that testimony. In other words, if fresh proof emerges, she's vulnerable. And let's not ignore what that means emotionally. Wendi testified against her own mother, a woman now serving life because of the same case that destroyed her marriage and her children's family. Whatever else she is, that's a psychological nightmare. She's watching the fallout of a conspiracy she's linked to by blood, if not by evidence. She can't escape the name Adelson. She can't escape the Markel legacy. Every time another verdict lands, her name trends. Every time a prosecutor makes a statement, she's the invisible subject. And it's worth asking, how does someone live like that? How do you move through the world knowing that any day your phone could buzz and it's not a friend texting you, but a state attorney saying, "We need to talk"? That's its own kind of prison. Legally speaking, Wendi's position is what's called unindicted co-conspirator territory. It's limbo. You're part of the narrative, but not the docket. The jury of public opinion already thinks you're guilty, but the legal system hasn't caught up, or can't. Prosecutors walk a fine line in those situations. If they move too soon, they risk losing the entire case on insufficient evidence. If they wait too long, the statute of limitations on ancillary charges, conspiracy, obstruction, even accessory after the fact, can start to run out. That's why after Donna's sentencing, the state was careful. They didn't celebrate. They didn't declare victory. They said the investigation remains open. That's prosecutor speak for, "We're still looking at you, Wendi." And for now, there's nothing in the public to suggest an imminent arrest. But the reality of criminal cases is that silence doesn't mean inactivity. Grand juries operate in secret. Evidence doesn't leak until it's ready. And if this case has taught us anything, it's that the walls close slowly. They do. They close a lot more slowly in this case than all at once. Remember, it took 8 years from the day of the murder for Charlie Adelson to face trial. For years, he lived comfortably, running a dental practice, smiling on social media, acting like life had gone back to normal. Then one recording surfaced, the infamous bump tape, and suddenly he was in cuffs. Wendi knows that pattern better than anyone. She watched it happen to her brother. Or maybe she doesn't remember. I don't recall. One day he was free, the next he was a headline. That's the danger of living at the edge of a conspiracy. You never know which conversation, which call, which overlooked text will become the thread that unravels your whole life. And it's not lost on anyone that Wendi herself may be holding the final key. Because every person charged so far, from the gunman to the mother to the brother, had someone else to point to. Wendi's the only one left without a scapegoat. If she's innocent, the world may never believe it. If she's guilty, the truth may never be proven. Either way, she's trapped in a narrative she can't escape. One built by her family, fueled by ambition, and cemented by murder. That's the kind of story that doesn't end in a courtroom. It ends in psychology. When you listen to Wendi's own words, both in interviews and on the stand, there's a striking duality. She talks about wanting peace, moving on, protecting her children, yet her tone carries the same defensive deflection that's echoed through every Adelson testimony. There's always someone else to blame, always another context. But no amount of distance can erase the timeline. Markel's murder cleared the path for Wendi to relocate. Within weeks, she was gone, South Florida, mission accomplished. That sequence doesn't prove anything criminal, but it's a pattern that keeps prosecutors from closing the book. Because if the motive was a relocation and the relocation happened, the question remains, was that coincidence or consequence? That's why this case still matters. It's not about vengeance. It's about closure for the Markel family, for the justice system, for the two boys who have to grow up carrying both names, Markel and Adelson, although we all know how much they already tried to wipe away the Markel part, those Adelsons, them. Wendi's fate may never be sealed in a courtroom, but she'll live the rest of her life shadowed by the case that defined her family. And maybe, for a woman who once claimed she felt trapped by her ex-husband, that's the final irony. She is still trapped. Only now it's by the silence of a secret she can't undo. and by a justice system that might still be waiting for one more reason to knock on her door. If that knock comes, until that knock comes or doesn't, she remains exactly what she's been for the last 11 years. The Adelson who got away. Tell me your thoughts in the comments section. Do you think she kept her distance enough? She may have. There are certainly people whose families are verbose enough, selfish enough, self-serving enough, and ignorant enough to think that we're going to go take care of this for her. I mean, you got to look. They already did treat her like a child. They treated all their children like children, which is probably why they acted like children as adults. It's not out of the realm of insanity or conspiracy or possibility, I think is the word. It's not out of the realm of possibility that the rest of the cluster Adelsons did this on their own. Now, Wendy's got some weird actions in this story, without a doubt. But she also has some that do seem to add up to being utterly sick over the situation that her family put her in, if we're to believe that she had nothing to do with this. I don't know. Your thoughts in the comments section on YouTube. Search Hidden Killers with Tony Brueski. That's where you will find us. And press subscribe while you're there. Until next time, I'm Tony Brueski. We'll talk again real soon.
Want more on this case and others? Then press subscribe now and don't miss a moment of true crime coverage from Tony Brueski and the Hidden Killers podcast. This is Hidden Killers with Tony Brueski. Here now, Tony Brueski.
Let's start with why this word immunity even matters in the Adelson saga, and specifically the trajectory of Wendi Adelson, who I will say as always maintains her innocence, has never been charged with anything, and yeah, there you go. This is an opinion piece. This is, in my opinion, this is allegedly blah, 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 blah. In every murder for hire case, there is a question that hangs over the courtroom like smoke. There is. Ever been in a courtroom, you know what that's all about. Who's telling the truth? And who's telling it only because they were promised protection from saying it? Sometimes you have to wonder about that. Sometimes it's out there in the open. It's like documented. In the Dan Markel case, that question has always landed on one person, and her name is Wendi Adelson. When Donna Adelson went on trial for orchestrating her former son-in-law's murder, Wendi wasn't just another witness. She was the one person who could tie motive, money, and family, intent together in a way no one else could. But there was a problem. She also sat close enough to the conspiracy that her words could have opened her up to prosecution herself. Ooh, that's not good. If you're Wendi, that's where the deal came in. Before she ever walked into that courtroom, the state of Florida gave her use and derivative use immunity, the narrow kind of legal armor that says, we can make you testify, and in exchange, we won't use your compelled answers or anything directly derived from them to charge you later. A version of this is how Bill Cosby is now free. Okay? It is not a get-out-of-jail-free card. It's more like a bulletproof vest with a few holes in it. It keeps you safe only from the shots that come from your own mouth. And that's the ground we're standing on today. As everyone wonders, will they charge her next? I don't know. I don't know how much she knew. Neither do you. But we can speculate. What did Wendi actually say under that shield? What exactly is she protected from? And which of those statements would have blown back on her hard if that protection didn't exist? That's what we're going to examine here today. And in the comment section on YouTube, your thoughts, please. Love to hear them. Just search Hidden Killers with Tony Brueski. If you're not on YouTube already, to find us there, you can comment on this if you're listening on the podcast platforms. When Wendi took the stand, she began by confirming what prosecutors had spent years trying to prove. Her mother didn't want her stuck in Tallahassee. She repeated that Donna called her life there a hostage situation, a prison. Those are Wendi's own words under oath. And they draw a direct line from the family's obsession with control to the motive for actual murder. She acknowledged endless email chains with her mother about the custody battle, confirming that the state displayed dozens of times. She didn't deny them. She owned them. She admitted that Donna had come up with what she herself called strong-arm tactics to force Dan Markel's consent to relocation. Convert the kids, humiliate him, offer him $1 million payout. Wendi told the jury she thought those ideas were crazy. But she also made it clear who would have supplied the money. My mom, my dad, and my brother. She conceded that after the murder, she told the police, my parents have more reason to dislike Danny than anyone else. Odd statement. Now she calls that statement one that she made in shock. And then came the infamous TV versus hitman conversation, where Charlie joked that it would have been cheaper to buy a television than to hire someone to kill Dan. Wendi confirmed it happened. She said it was in poor taste, which, yeah, it was. It's kind of a, I get people say things. Had no one ended up dead, it would have been just that. But someone ended up dead by a hitman, by a man convicted of hiring the hitman with a money trail. But she denied knowing anything about it beforehand. She denied giving out information, even unknowingly. She denied any family pact built on plausible deniability. She called her mother a very good mother, or something to that extent. She testified Donna never once said that Donna deserved harm, and she admitted calling Dan an STD and an emotional terrorist in old messages, dismissing it as emotional venting, not evidence of malice. That's the record, the literal transcript of what she said while sitting under the state's subpoena. Now, what does that immunity actually do for her? It locks all that testimony into a safe. Prosecutors can't use her answers or any evidence that's sprouted from those answers to bring charges against her later. If they want to prosecute her someday, they have to build that case from evidence found entirely on its own, independent of what she said on that stand. No chain of custody leading back to her words. No derivative use. That's a very specific kind of safety. It is not forgiveness. It is containment, basically. But that safety has limits. It doesn't protect her from perjury if she lied. It doesn't cover her if the state builds a case from bank records, texts, or witnesses they obtained independently. Remember, there was a lot of I just don't remember from Wendi. That's not lying. And it doesn't travel with her if the defense tries to call her to the stand. That's why her attorney successfully killed the defense subpoena. Her armor only fits when the state is the one asking the questions. So let's imagine she didn't have a deal, just for a moment here. Her statement that she was a hostage in Tallahassee, well, that's motive, plain and simple. Her description of the $1 million payoff, well, that's means. It shows a willingness to put money towards solving a problem, and it would have played like a blueprint for the crime, in my opinion. The acknowledgement that my parents have more reason to dislike Danny than anyone else, that's awareness, maybe even foresight. Her recollection of the hitman joke, that's familiarity with the idea of violence against her ex-husband. Her text messages calling him names, that's context and state of mind. Without immunity, prosecutors could stitch all of those threads into a conspiracy tapestry in about 5 minutes, in my opinion. With immunity, those threads are sealed off and untouchable. The state can still look for matching colors somewhere else, but they can't pull from that fabric. So, why did prosecutors agree to this? Because they needed her voice to build the story. Wendi was the human bridge between the victim and the people who planned his death. Without her, jurors would have been left to guess what those family dynamics looked like from the inside. With her, the state got an inside narrator, the person who lived the resentment, the custody fight, the money talk, all of it, from behind the curtain. And for Wendi, the deal meant survival. She gets to talk without incriminating herself, at least not directly, but that's a temporary kind of safety. Again, if independent evidence ever surfaces, say a phone log or message threads that proves she knew more than she admitted, prosecutors can still move in. They just have to keep their case completely clean of her immunized testimony. That's the razor's edge Wendi Adelson walks, protected but not free. Every word she spoke is legally wrapped in caution tape, but the world still heard it. And when you listen back, the picture that emerges is of a woman trying to tell the truth just far enough to stay safe, while never saying anything that closes the trap door under her family's name. Immunity doesn't erase her role in this story. It just made her vision or version of it admissible and untouchable at the same time. That's the paradox that keeps this case alive. The state got its testimony, Wendi got her shield, and the rest of us are left wondering whether the truth we heard was a confession or just a performance carefully rehearsed behind bulletproof glass. Because in the world of hidden killers, immunity isn't always about justice. Sometimes it's just the price of keeping the story moving. You be the judge. Did Wendi know? Was Wendi a part of all of this? Or was she another victim of her family? Her overzealous, narcissistic family that was going to do what they were going to do, come hell or high water, whether she liked it or not. And she's left to pick up the pieces because the narcissists, well, they never do. I don't know. I don't know the answer to that question, and I can honestly see it both ways. There are certainly things that, one, if you're in this enmeshed family, you would think you would know about your family. On the outside, it looks like there's some knowledge. Is it knowledge, or is it just I'm going to just say feeling? That sounds so light. But when you know what your family is capable of and you see things in motion that they didn't tell you about, it's not always hard to connect the dots. That doesn't mean you knew about it. It means you know they're capable of it. And there is a difference. But where does Wendi fall in all of that? She maintains her innocence. Your thoughts in the comments section on YouTube. If you're not already there, search Hidden Killers with Tony Brueski, and that is where you will find us. We'll keep talking. You keep giving us your thoughts. Be sure to press subscribe wherever you are listening so you don't miss any of our commentary and coverage on this case. I'm Tony Brueski. We'll talk again real soon.
Want more on this case and others? Then press subscribe now and don't miss a moment of true crime coverage from Tony Brueski and the Hidden Killers podcast.